I'm RB, the host of RB Talks. Tonight we're going to explore something that nearly all of us face at some point in our lives, and that is an identity crisis. It is a very unsettling season and one that, thank God, we get through. At least most of us get through. But because of life changes and transitions and relationships, we may find ourselves in an identity crisis more than once in our lifetime. So, to help me to unpack this topic that we have all faced, I have two very insightful guests: Minister Evangelist Patrice Thomas and Reverend Eric Hood. Thank you so much and welcome for being with me to talk about this topic.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. So I'm excited, but before we get going, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the heart of your ministries? Patrice, why don't you start us off?
Wow. I was hiding, hoping that I would be
I saw
first.
you. I saw you.
So, hi, I'm Patrice Thomas, and I am the founder of Teardrops Liquid Language of the Heart. We are a social empowerment Christian network where we're transforming the way that you think. We're empowering you to overcome the obstacles that you have in your life. And we're igniting the passion, the power, and the potential that lies on each and every one of us. Currently, we do a broadcast every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. And where we talk about Tuesday transformation tidbits. And what we do is we help you deal with life circumstances. It's about empowering people in this day and time that we live in, giving them the tools that they need to overcome the obstacles that's in your life, because your life is what happens in the past. It's in the past.
It
Your
is.
presence is what is so significant, and how you propel yourself to the next is really what we're into. So we're helping you to ignite that power you have on the inside. You need to be able to ignite that passion that you know that you have, and then the potential will take you where you need to go in life. But it all starts with knowing who God is. We can do a lot of things, but without God, we're not going to be successful in doing the things that He called us to do. So I'm currently will be an author by the end of 2025.
Congratulations.
So I'm in the process of developing and moving my book into distribution. So look for it to come. I will be advertising it within the next month. It'll be everywhere so that I can just let people know that we're here and we're here to meet the need.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. I can't wait. Now, you don't want to tell us anything about like the name of it or anything. You don't want to, no? Yeah.
So the name of it is basically Teardrops, and it's from the Valley of Tears to the City of Joy. It's one decision that changes everything.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it because I want to hear what
You'll get the first preference of it because you're going to be one of our proofers. So we're in the process of doing it, and I'm excited. It's taken years for it to develop and to get to it, but I believe God has a place in a time that He brings you before, that He propels you to get you to where you is. And I believe this just is the time for it to happen. And when you're in God's timing, you'll never know what can happen. But I believe that it can be an explosion because it all belongs to God.
explosion. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. Reverend Hood, would you like to tell us a little about yourself and your ministries?
Yes. Um, Good evening. This is Reverend Eric Hood, and I'm just a New Jersey, Trenton, born and raised native. And I'm just a simple individual who loves the Lord. And I am the co-founder of the Meeting Place. And the Meeting Place Ministry is just something that the Lord laid upon my heart, my wife and our heart, to create a safe place for people of all denominations and all walks of life, in all ethnicity groups, to come together and be able to fellowship within the Word of God and just to fellowship with one another. It was designed to show the love that we so sorely need in the world today, breaking down barriers of language, breaking down barriers of backgrounds and in your past, and just being able to come safely and to be able to reflect on the word of God, be able to receive a word from the Lord. And we start with prayer, we end with prayer. And we have been the Lord has really been growing the ministry since we started out with three, excuse me, my wife and my aunt. And now we've grown to over 60 every Monday. And we meet every Monday evening at 8:30, and we are prompt. We start on time and we end on time. So from 8:30 to 9, we invite you to come to the meeting place and just fellowship with us and enjoy the impact of God's word, because at the end of the day, that's what changed lives.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Sounds like a wonderful ministry. Knowing the hand of God is in it because He's growing. It's growing.
Yes.
Amen. So let's get started. All right, you ready? All right, I
Yes.
want to read the definition, or at least one definition, of an identity crisis. It is a sense, an identity, first of all, is a sense of knowing who you are. It's a unique combination of your qualities, your beliefs, relationships, and experiences that distinguish you from others and provides a sense of self identity. So, knowing who you are, that's a period of identity. So, when we're having a crisis, it's a period of uncertainty and doubt about oneself, purpose, and values. And as I mentioned, it's a very uncomfortable place. So, here's my first question: what does the phrase identity crisis mean to you personally?
Whew. Well, personally, to me, the identity crisis personally means that has become a crack or a disconnect with yourself and who you're supposed to be. To me, it's a phenomenon when you start beginning to question and reevaluating who you are, uh, and then you fall into a sense of confusion, which is actually, it's more than being confused. It just represents a phase in my life or anyone's life where you know the moments of who you are and where you belong and why you're here is questioned, and is not only questioned by you, but as you begin to question it, then people around you will also begin to see that there's a crisis going on, because you begin to act out of contact or act out of character. So it's, to me, it's just a period of time, like you said, with not only confusion, but it's a period of time of disconnect. You're disconnected with yourself.
Mm, hmm. Patrice, would you
I,
like?
I, I agree with him. It's a time where there is really conflicts between your self perception and external expectations of you. And I think when we look at that, that leads us to a time that we become confused, bewildered, beswixed. We don't know which way that we're doing. It's a time that we have adjusted masks on our face, because when we don't know who we are and we're trying to discover the true self of who we are, we place a mask on our face because we have to have a different face to every grouping of people that we come in, because we
Mhm.
haven't learned who we are. But the greatest thing about when you're in a crisis, you have the ability to come out that crisis. It's not your ending time frame. It's not where you're going to stay, but it's
Okay.
just a step that you have to walk through to discover who you are. It's a growing process that you go through. And I think in life we all have gone there, from childhood up until being adults. And some of us every day we walk into identity crisis of whether or not we should do what we do. But I think it's a time of self-discovery also. I think we always look at that word in a negative connotation, but there is a positive reframe that goes along with that word to let us know that I'm just growing right about this time. I have
Mhm.
just discovered something new. I've just entered into a world of change, and change brings about a crisis.
Mm,
Right.
mm. Elaborate on that a little bit, either of you.
Hmm.
Change bring. Well, let me ask you, and perhaps you can answer it in this way. Was there ever a season in your life or an event in your life that triggered questioning your identity?
Yes, I would open up with this one. The event that changed, that really, it changed my life. Like, Patrice said, when with crisis, you can come out of it, and there's room for growth, and there's different things. It's a transitional period of time that can be in a positive fashion. For me, it was when my son passed away. Um, I knew who I was. But I began to question, blaming myself first off. He passed away in his sleep, and there was nothing anyone could have done. But it took a while because I'm still yet blaming myself. So technically, I'm in a form of the identity crisis still yet. I blame myself, and then after I got finished blaming myself, I begin to question me as a man of God, because then I'm starting to think, if I prayed more, or if I had opened up Bible study a little bit more, opens up a conversation of the word a little bit more, what all these things were affecting my identity, because I began to question whether, is this, Lord, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be preaching? Because I wanted to just fall into a hole and hide for as long as I could, as long as reality and the world will allow me to hide. I wanted to hide because I felt useless. I felt how can I say it? I was damaged as a father because I felt like I could have done more. And my identity as a man, my identity as Eric Hood, my identity as a husband and as a father was fractured. And I'm still putting the pieces together. That's why I was so excited about this forum, because this is an opportunity to be transparent and to let people know that even though you may go through an identity crisis, you can come out. You can come out on the other side, but it does require it requires a little work. It requires a lot of attention, and I don't like to use the word self-love, loosely, but you have to begin to love yourself again. You had to begin to come to a place where, wait a minute, before this situation, I knew who I was. And this situation, I'm not going to allow it to transition me into a place of confusion, but I'm going to allow this situation, which it had, transform me into a place of more solidified understanding of who I am and what I can do. So my identity crisis was definitely when I lost my son. And like I said, I picked up the pieces for a long time. And it's a little different because I not only had to pick my pieces up, but I had to be there as, again, the father and husband for my wife and for my children. So it was very touch and go, but by the grace of God, I'm here and I know who I am. And without a shadow of a doubt, I definitely want to be a blessing to anybody else out there who's maybe going through the same thing.
It's good. That's real good. Patrice, you mentioned something about expectations. Um, Family expectations bring about changes, bring about transition. The way we grew up can also shape our identity. So, expectations, upbringing, our culture, for the better or for the worse. And maybe this goes to your point about change.
Mhm. It does. I think what we do when we start out in life, let's just be honest, we're around our family. Whether it's a two-parent home, one-parent home, you're still engrossed into your family. So every expectation, every need that you have is being met by that nucleus that you have. So you don't know anything else. So they set your values. They set how you see life. They set your emotions. They set how you have relationships with other people. And then when we begin to transition into school, a change comes about because now this is my dynamic from home, but now I'm entering into a different arena. And in this different arena that I'm entering into, none of them may be the same as I am. So now change has entered in. And now my eyes are opening to something different. So then I have to deal within myself, can I accept the change? Or am I going to begin to doubt who I am? Because who you are is really defined in your household. But what we don't understand in that definition, we don't give ourselves opportunity for growth. Change is growth. So when I enter into kindergarten, get set away from the home,
Mm.
I'm entering into an opportunity of growth. How I take that growth determines whether or not I want to grow any further. And
Mhm.
I think it also comes back to that dynamic of the household. I went to school and someone called me ugly. How do I handle it? Because now what that did is opened up a portal in my mind to say what is ugly. Because my family has always told me that I was beautiful.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So now I'm fighting with an identity crisis.
Good. That's real good. Yes. Yes. Eric, did you want to add something?
That's profound because I too believe that I think from adolescence to adulthood, that shifting of roles and responsibilities in itself is almost like a natural trigger, because being a teenager, like Patrice said, in the house, in our homes, we have a structure, a safety net to say. Like she said, if someone called me ugly, my mom has always said I'm handsome, or she always said the right things to correct what was wrongly said to me earlier. But becoming an adult, from an adolescent, becoming an adult is an important stage. But the change in the social roles and the responsibilities in our personal identity begin to shift. And as they move away from the structure of the home, which we had the safety net, uh, we start to move into a place of relying now on what others are thinking and saying, because we are no longer in that safety area. So that transition is very vital. And it's almost like we had to teach our young people to make that transition, show them how to make that transition, because if not, social media is so, ooh, it's great, but it can be a monster when it
Mhm.
comes to identity for our young people, because they are seeing on social media their favorite celebrity or athlete, and they're beginning to gravitate to them, to the place of what makes them, and what is powerful in their identity. And if they're in a place of crises, then they're going to gravitate to what makes them who they are. And once they try to come to that level and they can't, then they fall into a trap where now we have suicide. We have youthful teen suicide because they can't be who they're inspiring to be, and their identity does not level up to what what their expectation of their heroes are. So now we have people who are just teens and young people who are giving up on themselves. So that transition from adulthood, adolescence to adulthood, is pivotal. And I believe that as adults and as parents and mentors, we had to really pay close attention
Mhm.
to our young people who are coming into that phase of life, because that's where it's pivotal to them becoming who they were in the house to who they're going to be in society.
That's excellent, and I couldn't agree anymore. There is one other experience that we haven't touched on. It could happen in the home. It could happen outside the home, but there are trauma. There's trauma that we experience,
Mm,
bad situations. Perhaps it's the loss of someone,
mm,
right? Perhaps it is a molestation. There are perhaps it's a teenage pregnancy. How does that play into our identity?
mm,
I think that shifts our identity because it goes back to the point when we deal with trauma. How do we know that it's trauma? Somewhere along the line, someone had to discover that trauma is trauma.
mm,
Because when you're in your home, there's things that seem to be normal. When we talk about the death of someone, as I always say, one of the most serious points in my life was when I lost my mother a couple of years ago, and I felt as though that I lost the foundation. I lost something that was poured inside of me, that now when I had problems, I had nobody to run to, even as an adult, and say, well, what do you think about this? Because your parents become your foundation. So that death took me through a whirlwind of different emotions. But it taught me in that time that in the midst of it, you still have to live,
Right.
because you're crying and it's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve. And to be honest, it was a pivotal point in my life, but it challenged me of the understanding of death and me. It challenged me to know that you lost something, but can you live beyond the loss?
Hmm.
And living could be just waking up the next morning and placing your feet on the floor.
That's good.
It's the simple things that taught me how to live again. And it's the simple things that we take for granted. Living, it for me, could be just taking a stretch, because now I have become so enclosed in me. And you have to come out of you, looking yourself in the mirror and declaring that you still have life
Right.
beyond something that you lost.
So, regardless of what the loss is, whether it's a family member or it's our sexual innocence, those are transitions in our life that come to place a demand on who we are, on our identity, and how we're going to bounce back, as it were.
Definitely. Definitely.
Eric, you mentioned social media, and the word that comes to mind, and it's probably for just about every age group, and that is comparison.
Hmm. Yes.
If social media doesn't shine that in front of us, and our children, and from every age, I don't know what else does.
Yes.
How does comparison and social media, how does it play in creating or deepening this crises that we're in? Because let me just first say, are we in a crisis?
Yes. Uh,
Do we,
Almost like a pandemic. Yes.
we're in a crisis. So how does this comparison play in creating or deepening this identity crisis that we're in?
Well, comparison in itself could be a dangerous aspect, because when you begin to compare, let's take for instance, if you compare yourself with someone else, and the situation, the two situations are entirely different. One is rich and you're not. One has a lifestyle and they have all the things that they're desiring and you don't. But you're comparing yourself with them as if to be like them.
Mm.
And I think that's where it gets dangerous, because at some point, that's when a lot of our situations that are going on that are detrimental in the world is because individuals are trying to be like something that they're not. And when you begin to try to be something that you're not, there's going to be a huge fracture in that foundation. First off, second off, you're going to be disappointed, and with disappointment, it can be a sense of trauma. If you look at it, when you get disappointed with something that completely floors you, that is a sense of trauma in itself. And that trauma it will trigger an identity crisis. It's going to trigger a confusion. It's going to trigger you to begin to reevaluate who you are, or are you good enough? That's a question that's asked. Am I good enough? Can I do, or can I be like? So the comparison element can be good in a sense where it can help you to level up to where you're trying to go, or it can be dangerous because it'll allow you to be something or be like something that you're not, that you more than likely will not become. So I think that when you come to a place of identity crisis with the comparison, it's dangerous. It's something that but it's not something that we can move away from. It's not something that we shouldn't talk about, because it happens every day. Every day there's some young girl that looks on Facebook and sees someone with what they call the Coke bottle shape and no acne and no nothing, and this is what she's inspiring to be. So she's watching all these TikToks that eventually become taking over her time, and she's trying to be like her. Now, it might be because she wants to feel better about herself. More than likely, that is the case. But when you strive so hard to be like something or someone else in a place where it consumes everything about you, then you're going to have a problem.
Definitely. What did we lose in the garden?
I was waiting for that question. Oh my goodness, the garden. I mean,
It sounds to me like we're talking about our worth, our value, knowing who we are. So, what did we lose when Adam sinned and disobeyed?
oh man.
I think we lost. What did we lose in the garden when we began to look at it? We lost a clear sense of identity.
Yeah.
We lost a clear sense of purpose, and we lost a connection with God. And when we begin to look at that, let's go back to Genesis 1. Genesis 1 really, it depicts the creation as being good. And then when it talks about human, it talks about human being made of God's image. And then what happens when we were humans that were made of God's image, it entrusted us and gave us stewardship over the earth. And then we begin to live in harmony with the Creator. So we were living on top of the world in the abundance. But after the fall, that's when disruption came in, because now harmony is disrupted. Humanity is experienced a separation from God. There's a loss of innocence that's going on. So now there's an introduction to shame. It's an introduction to fear. It's an introduction into brokenness. And then what happens is it affects our sense of self.
Right.
So we lost those things. And I love the two scriptures you gave, the Matthew 5:13 that talks about the salt. I loved it because when I was really looking at this and I was really doing some research, when we look at the salt and when he talks about we're being the salt of the earth, he's speaking about a call to restoration, what was lost. So when we look at salt represents value. It represents a safety guard and it represents purpose. Mm-hmm. So when Jesus called us the salt, what he was doing is inviting us back to reclaim the role of an influence. We got to be an influencer for good, restoring flavor in the meaning back into the world. So our connection with God gives us that ability, that power for us to do what we ask. But we lost it because we lost our sense of self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eric?
I agree. And what we lost in the garden, we lost our relationship with God, the clarity of our identity, our purpose, even our authority. When you look at the acts that led to the fall, the immediate shame as they realized when they were naked and they hid from God. Creating fear and brokenness was all introduced into their lives. And then they're plainly their relationship, the spiritual separation occurred, but disrupting their true identity. And as image bearers, we're the image, we were created in the image of God. So all of this was disrupted, with the clarity of their identity. There were some consequences that were triggered. They were no longer grounded in the humanity, in God's humanity. They began to seek value elsewhere. It was achievement, power, knowledge, and control. They defined themselves. It was futile. The quest echoed even in Ecclesiastes. If you look at it, 1 and 2, all is vanity. So it was a sense of emptiness and self-constructed identity apart from God. And our the loss in Eden was behavioral. It was a fundamental distortion if you look at it. So we lost a lot. And since then, humanity has just been consistently looking for restoration, like Patrice said. That restoration about being the salt. So we lost a lot.
That was our identity crisis.
Yes. Yes, we lost a lot.
I think we kind of lost Rhonda just.
I believe so. She'll be back. But yeah, that was what we lost. Looking at the basically that is the epicenter of where identity crisis really began. If you look at it, the loss in the garden, because what they went through, and then the loss that they had to endure and suffer through, just pretty much echoed right into where we are now, where we're having a problem with who we are. I'm
I
not.
think it's a journey from loss to restoration. I think
Mm,
in the midst of it, what it does is it echoes, an ongoing process of really self discovery and growth. I
mm,
think with everything that we go through in life, there is a growth part of it that we've got to live through.
we have to.
Because with growth and with self discovery, you've got to deal with you. And I often say, to thy own self be true. You got to really deal with who you are. I often do an activity that you look in the mirror.
Uh-huh.
And as you look in the mirror, what you do is you begin to speak to you. But
Okay.
as we're speaking to us to look in the mirror will give you your self image from the outside and not from the inside. But
Hmm.
as you begin to look into the mirror, what you have to do is you have to begin to depict things about yourself that you can't visually see from the outside.
Wow.
Then you begin to identify with who you are in
Wow.
life. I think a lot of times we have to deal with that component of it, and
Mhm.
we don't do very well because the first thing we do when we look in the mirror, we're always looking at our hair, we're looking at our outward appearance, but we
Mhm.
never identify with our inner appearance.
Isn't that something?
So and it's something that's not easy. It's a difficult thing because
Right.
to be honest with you, how many of us really can look in the mirror and begin to depict us apart?
Hmm. All
How
right.
many people can identify, the authentication of who we are?
Mm.
And the reason why we always want to be someone else is because we haven't really found out who we are.
Right. Right.
There's not a settledness in us. Because if we're fearfully and we're wonderfully made from the Father,
Hmm.
then to criticize and to compare yourself to be someone else is basically saying, Father, you didn't know what you were doing when you created me. You
Mm.
who don't like what I am, I don't want what you gave me
Mm.
or who you given me to be. So now I'm criticizing you.
Yes. I mean, that was eloquently put, and you just made me see it in a different light as well. We are the image of God. So when we are in turmoil or in conflict with who we are and what we look like, we are basically saying to God, listen, I need a do-over because
Yeah.
what you created originally is just not working for me. And that can, that can place a person in uh, a dangerous place to be in. And when you begin to question what God has created you to be. But I believe you said something about the mirror, and I believe Rhonda put out, and she made an analogy about the cracked mirror, which I thought was very profound. The mirror itself, the metaphor, to me, it illustrates a crisis that disrupts an internal sense of self,
Yeah.
which leads to fragmented understanding about who you are. You know, the cracks to me are like psychological, it represents the forces that cause us to doubt our own selves and see ourselves in a different concept. Cracks in our own self concept are caused by various forces. Self doubt can cause cracks in our mirrors. Conflicting values can cause cracks in our mirrors. Changing of life roles can cause those cracks in that mirror. And I think the biggest one is the societal expectation. What society expects of us. That pressure in itself will result in all kinds of cracks in that mirror. So I think that was a great analogy, Rhonda, that you shared
Yeah.
about the cracked mirror because it simplifies a lot of things.
Patrice mentioned trauma. And I think that when we look at our families, and of course, this is in every family, but the cracked mirror is cracked there. It's cracked
Mhm.
somewhere in that house.
Mm,
Somewhere there's a brokenness that occurred.
mm,
And that changed the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world.
Yes.
I believe
And if you aren't able to identify and get healing or the mirror restored in some fashion, you'll go throughout life cracked, broken, unable to see yourself clearly,
it. Mm, mm,
and unable to see others the way they are supposed to be seen.
right.
Because we're looking through crackness. We're cracked. So we don't understand what wholeness is all about because all our life we've been living in crackness and fragments. I mean, there's half full, half empty with that glass of crackness and fragments.
Right.
You know, it can be good because it could show various levels, various different things in our life, but it can also be bad because now that we have cracks, we don't know what it looks like to look into a mirror that does not have cracks.
Right,
Mm.
right.
And then when you look at the cracks in the mirror, naturally you see so many different various images of yourself.
Mhm.
It used to be one full mirror. I just saw one me. Now, as I'm looking through the eyes of a cracked mirror, now I see many versions of myself. And so now I'm trying to depict on which one of these versions is the right one.
Mhm.
Herein lies the masks that we wear
Yes.
Right. Right. There it is.
Yes.
There it
because
is.
we don't know who we really are. We so many can be a chameleon. Many decide they want to be more than they are, or they change depending on who they're with,
Right. That
and they
society,
never
society
discover.
input. Yep, that
Exactly,
society will do it to you. The
exactly.
status quo, it'll do
Finish
it.
this. Finish this sentence for me. Longing to belong.
Ooh, longing to belong.
Wow.
Longing to belong where I am. Longing to belong where I am.
Wow.
Okay,
Where I am. Because
longing
I
to
feel
belong.
like I feel like once you come to the place where you you, you see and you're facing the identity crisis and you get to the place now where okay, I'm understanding who I am and I'm understanding where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing. I truly believe that throughout your journey, God is subtly keeping you where you need to be, so when you do come out of that fall, you'll find that okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I am. And so I'm going to move forward in this from where I am now with my identity intact. And I'm going to begin to achieve what I truly believed I was meant to achieve from the beginning. So I don't know. I might be a little off with that one, but that's where I'm at.
That was
That's
good.
good. That was good. Longing to belong.
I think for me, longing to belong is longing to belong in the person that I am, embracing my identity. I'm longing to belong into the self assurance of that I was created for something
Hmm.
and understanding that I may have flaws, but my flaws does not define who I am. It's part of my journey in my growth for me to become the substance of the woman that God has designed for me. So I'm longing to belong into the enrichment of who Christ has made me and loving me, just resting in me, just entertaining me. I often say I want to get to the point and tell I want to date me. I want to go out when I'm dating me, and not to say that, not no one else, but when we're talking about us, I want to date me. I want to take me to a place that right now, and I can take myself out, but I want to take me to a place until I am so ecstatic to be with me that is simply amazing. I love my conversation with me. I'm assured of who God has called me to be. When I enter into the room with other people who are greater than I am, it gives me the unction to get in there, but it also gives me the assurity that I can rest in who I am. I don't have to compare myself to them because I understand who I am. So I'm long to know who I am in the fullness of who God made me with, and then to love me and to embrace me and to enjoy me. Not in a conceited matter,
Of course not. Of course not. Of
surety.
course not. So I think it's important for people to understand who they are, to know who they are, to love who they are, to embrace who they are.
Mhm.
And once that happens, all of the comparison and all of the uncertainty and all of the confusion, but it's easier said than done. And I think that's
Yes.
why this crisis is the way it is, because it's easier said than done. Finding that place of wholeness is difficult.
Mhm.
So how do we get there? How do we tell folks, regardless of your age? Because sometimes we assume that those who are 50 and plus know who they are,
Right.
but that's not necessarily the case. How do we get people out of that crisis mode?
I think we
Back to
have to.
that garden. Yeah,
I'm,
that
I'm
garden
sorry.
experience. No,
I,
go
I
ahead.
think we have to. I think you have to deal with everyone where they are. I think that's the first start of it. We have to understand people and allow people to vent on who they are, because you can never grow until first you identify where you are. You got to identify. I often say, and I have nothing against alcoholics or anything else, but an alcoholic can never be delivered until he declares that I am an alcoholic. And the reason why he goes to AAA and whatever, he has at some point to come to the reality that this is who I am. We cannot change the identity crisis until people begin to identify with who I am. Whether I'm low, whether I'm high, whether I have a desire to seem higher than what I am, I got to first understand where I am
Mhm.
and who I am. And I think sometimes we have these identity crises because we never start there. We never heard anybody declare who you are.
Mhm.
And I think that's the challenge. That's why these young girls want to be these Barbies. And baby girl, that's just not the makeup of your body, but you're beautiful with who you are. You're lovely. You want your skin to be a different color. I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. As much bleach as you try to do, look at Michael Jackson, it just does not happen.
Mhm.
But the color you are, you were made that color for a reason. There's purpose in your color. That's why there's so many different colors in the box of crayons, because each one of those colors are unique and beautiful and vibrant in where they are and where they stand. I think we have to start off there. And even as adults, some of us have to go back to the foundation of when we lost what we lost and deal with the loss. Not kick it under the carpet, not act like it does not exist, but deal with it. And it's going to hurt. It's not easy,
True.
but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
That's true.
Transition, I think someone said, brings about change.
Yes.
Mhm.
Acknowledging where we are, that we're hurt, that we lost, brings about change, growth, transformation. How do we get there, Eric?
I think there's some strategies that we could use to bring a harmony between your life goals and cultural expectations. I truly believe that self reflection and self awareness are two key to help you identify the true values and the passions that, one, make you different, and two, that are important to you. I think goals from a cultural aspect need to be more reeled into a sense of reality of what you can do. We can, the Bible says, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But we have to understand there are some who are dealing with identity crisis who
Mhm.
are not saved. So they will not fall back on that scripture. So they're going to have to go off of tangible, what they can see and feel on a daily basis. I think establishing healthy boundaries will help, being able to say no to commitments that compromise your well-being. It's okay to say no. I don't know how to say no. I'm still practicing. But it's okay to say no. A lot of times those can trigger uh, the identity crisis, because when they don't say no and they endeavor into something that's over their heads, then people begin to talk about them and look at them, and now they begin to question themselves just because they didn't say no. I think seeking support and mentorship,
Mhm.
let's not get away from that conversation. Engage with supportive individuals who understand, and your mentors who can provide a perspective in a way of encouragement, and not hammering down on you. Embracing authenticity, what we talked about earlier.
Yes.
Exactly.
Resilience. um, Live authentically, understand your progress, understand your limits, understand what you can do, and that will help define a growth. And it will help you also to approach challenges in your life with a little bit more courage and strength. It reinforces the values that are important to you, and that should be important to you anyway. So I think those, there's some things that we can do that can harmonize and bring that journey to a less combative uh, situation.
That's good.
I agree. I
I
thought
want to
that
give
was
each,
excellent. So
yes,
understand who.
yes, yes.
No,
I want to
go ahead.
give each of you an opportunity to say one closing remark, but I did want to ask, is our identity self-defined or God-defined or both?
I Go ahead, Patrice. You go first. I got you.
I think when we start out, it's self-defined, but when we have a connection with God, it becomes God-defined. I think, let me take that back. I think in staying within the two scriptures that you gave us, I think understanding God and understanding that God created us, I think we change our mindset with it and understanding the value of we are. So it's a combination when we start out, but as we begin to unravel, I think everything goes back to God. I
Yep.
think, while we were yet in our mother's womb, he was knitting us together. He was wooing us together to become the person that he wanted us to be. Before we knew who we were, he knew who we were. So there was a defined definition of who God said we were, but we have to learn how to get to that point. So I think it starts out one way, but I think God just puts the seal on it, when he becomes, because he's the ultimate designer.
Hmm.
We are his workmanship, created by him.
That's right.
He broke the mold to design each and every one of us for a specific purpose. So, we can't be greater than the designer,
That's true.
Nope.
Can't disagree with that.
Amen.
so,
Can't disagree with that.
That's it.
Eric, why don't you start?
I
Why don't you start with a closing remark, or a verse, or something that you want to share?
I want to share. I just want to encourage, everyone out there that with the identity crises, and if you're going through an identity crisis, that there is hope for change and you can get to the other side. And just as Patrice just mentioned, at the end of the day, it's God who gives you the strength. It's God who forms you. It's God who allows you to be who you are. So just come to reality and enjoy. I want you to learn to enjoy who you are, enjoy what your contributions are, and just understand that your identity is exclusive to you as your fingerprint. And if God gave you a good identity, He did. And your fingerprint is exclusive. So hold on to who you are and never lose it. Never let it go.
Excellent. Excellent. Patrice?
I just want to say to everyone that we are humans that are created in God's image. And I agree along with my brother on tonight. And there is a purpose and there's a plan for each and every one of us. But the awesome part of it is that we're fearfully and we're wonderfully made.
Me.
And irregardless of whatever someone may say to you, we always have to fall back on the point that God created us.
Yes.
And when He created us, He created us to be someone that was wonderfully made. He knew who we were going to be. He knew we were going to be left handed, left foot, big head, small head, everywhere. But your big head, your small head is something that God created and He thought was good. So I want to encourage that everybody on the day, take an opportunity, look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself every day, I'm fearfully and I'm wonderfully made. Because God, the creator of the universe, the one who spoke everything into existence, He told me it's. He's the great I am. And if He says that's who I am, that's who I am. And then identify in you. Identify the qualities in you that are different from someone else and say, I'm different because I have this. And you may not have it. I have a mole on my right hand side under my right eye that's brown. And when I gain weight, it gets bigger. When I lose it, it gets bigger. But it's my mole and it's beautiful every time I see it. And it's the little things that we say about us that will give us the unction to get to the bigger thing. Understanding that you want to keep your identity, you want to grow higher, but you don't want to lose who you are.
Right.
It's wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you both so much. This has been so encouraging for me, so insightful. And I truly believe that those who will view this will be blessed by it. Thank you so very much for being on this talk. I appreciate your time and God bless you. And we'll be talking really soon.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
For
Thank you
having
for having
Thank
us.
you for
You are
having us.
welcome. All right, then. God bless.
God
God
bless.
bless. Thank you.